Hi, I'm Tammy Potter, and welcome to the Pregnancy Process Podcast, a show designed to help you navigate the hugely transformative journey to motherhood, where you'll hear the unique experience of experts in this area and the incredible stories of women sharing their conception, pregnancy, and postnatal journeys so that you can have a healthier, more informed pregnancy. In today's episode, I talk to holistic pelvic care and Fembodiment practitioner Miranda Cheng, who shares a treasure trove of insights on nurturing your pelvic floor as we explore the physical, emotional, and spiritual connections to pelvic health. Miranda dives into the transformative power of holistic pelvic care, emphasizing the importance of understanding our bodies beyond traditional medical approaches. Discover how nourishing our pelvic space can lead to profound changes in our overall well-being. But this conversation goes far beyond just pelvic health. You'll learn about the intricate relationship between your pelvic floor and your emotional state, revealing how stress and tension can manifest physically in this area. Miranda explains how addressing these connections can lead to deeper healing and empowerment, allowing you to reclaim your body's wisdom. Miranda, thank you so much for your time today. It's fantastic to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you and to have the chat we're going to have.
I'm really excited about this conversation because I feel like you're that interconnectedness between the physical and maybe the spiritual and emotional side of things. And I love that aspect. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I think the best place to start would be with an overview of holistic pelvic care and just explaining how it differs from your more traditional approaches to pelvic health and what are the key, I know, don't mind me and my big questions, you'll get used to them. They're always like multi-layered. And then what are the key principles that guide holistic pelvic care?
Amazing. Great question. Great one to start with. What I want to start with is that when we're talking about care for the pelvis, for most people, I'm not saying everyone, this is just a very blanket statement, but for most people with vulvas, the care that we most often get would be going to get a pap smear or seeking medical care for something like a sexual health screening, maybe a UTI. And so it's generally a little bit more medical, or if a symptom has come up, something's come up and you need to address it. With holistic pelvic care, focuses a little bit more on preventative care, and then a primary focus is nourishing this part of your body. And so it's less clinical in its nature, even though some of the aspects are derived from physiotherapy. But in a session, you'll spend more than an hour with me. And the most important part is that we always check in with your body. So we won't do any internal work unless your body gives us permission, unless that feels right for you in the day. And it doesn't mean that the session stops. It just means that we adjust our approach.
So when you talk about nourishing this part of your body, because you're right, actually, I've never thought of it like that. It's very true. The only time that you would go and give that aspect and that part of your body any kind of care is if there was something wrong with it.
So you don't need to have a symptom to have the work done. It is obviously very beneficial if you are having symptoms, but it's really beautiful just as like your general health care for your pelvis, for your vulva. So it's really, I would say, essential care, even if that's twice a year, or if you do have symptoms, maybe it is something that we're working together towards, and then we space out sessions so that there's time for integration.
So when you talk about nourishing that part of your body and symptoms, what does that mean to you?
Okay, so nourishing that part of the body is, I think, first of all, it's like actually giving it some attention, because what's inside our pelvis, because it's internal, sometimes it's harder for us to have a relationship with it because we don't see it. Whereas something like taking care of our skin or taking care of our hair, it's so in our face. We look in the mirror, it's right there. And we might put a lot of attention on looking after that part of ourselves. So this is actually bringing your awareness down into this space and actually learning to take care of it, whether that's through what you use to wash, or maybe it's about, okay, I'm actually going to check in with, am I holding on to tension here? Am I sucking in my tummy the whole day? Do I actually just need to invite myself to relax and soften? Or maybe it is addressing things that are a little bit more chronic. So that would be nourishing. And then physical treatment. So we do draw on physiotherapy. So we use things like, it is intravaginal massage if you choose to do the internal work. And so we'll use trigger point release, myofascial release, and also scar mobilization, especially if post-birth there has been some scar tissue.
So when you talk about the pelvis, what makes that, from a feminine perspective, obviously we understand why that space is so important, but from the holistic pelvic care, I know that there's some reasonings behind why that space is so important and what that space holds. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to. The pelvis really is, it's our superpower. It is magic. It's a literal portal inside our body. And whether or not you are wanting to give birth to a baby, whether or not you still have all of the organs, there's an energetic presence in all the organs that can be accessed. And really, it's the seat of our core of our being. It's the root of who we are. Our feminine voice, our inner authority resides in the pelvis. And so a lot of what holistic pelvic care is about is actually cultivating that connection so that maybe you actually start to lean into your own body for answers or for wisdom. You start to connect to that intuitive voice that you might hear people talking about, which is different from the voice of the mind. And it's something that can be cultivated with practice. And it's one of those things where if you've never done it before, it can feel weird and it can feel clunky and awkward. But like anything, the more time you spend doing it, the easier it becomes.
I love the idea that it's a portal. There's definitely an interconnectedness here of the mind, the body, the spirit. Can you talk to how
Yeah.
that manifests in your pelvic health and healing? Let's say there's something out of alignment. Can we talk about how that might manifest in your pelvis and in terms of healing?
Yeah, of course we can. So let's say there's an imbalance, and maybe it's a pattern of imbalanced movement in the actual pelvic floor muscles. And if you think about just from a physical aspect, everything is connected in the body through fascia. And so fascia is this tissue that goes through it's the only organ that goes through every single part of us. So an imbalance in fascia in the pelvis can also be actually affecting another part of our body because of that interwovenness of the fascia, which might affect posture, that could affect the way that your urinary tract works or bowel movements. So that's one way of seeing the imbalance. When we're thinking about the mind-body connection, when we do feel stress, whether it's low-grade stress, whether it's prolonged stress, when we feel that stress, and you might have heard of the psoas muscle, or they call it the fight and flight muscle. So when we are in stress, that contracts. And so when that contracts and that muscle actually runs through the pelvis to connect into the femur. And so they have this relationship where when there's tension in one, it can create more tension in the other and vice versa. So you can see how things kind of interweave. And if we are feeling emotional, if there is something going on in our lives, you can see how that would also affect the nervous system, which would affect the way our muscles are sitting, which affect how our posture is. So it's all kind of weaving in together. So if I do see someone, a client, say there is a lot of tension in the pelvis, or maybe they're having some sort of congestion or some sort of recurring symptom, to me, I look at that and I think, okay, where is this actually coming from? Because we can release tension through the body work, but if we're not actually looking at where does this keep coming back from? Why is this manifesting in the first place? Then, even if we bring some ease to it through the body work, it's going to come back. And so, we really want to start looking at where is this coming from? Can we actually bring some healing into this, bring some change, invite some change in so that you can create more lasting change for the client?
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? Because you can address the symptoms, but if you're not addressing the cause of the symptoms, then it's just putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone, right? I've never
Exactly.
heard of the psoas muscle as your fight or flight. That's so interesting. And
Mm,
when I think about it, so many
yeah.
people, that muscle is tight in them. We put it down to our lifestyles and sitting down too much, but is there an aspect of our stress levels being
Mm.
elevated consistently and people being ready to like fight or flight?
Absolutely. And yeah, and we do live in a world where I believe we are living in this kind of low grade chronic stress. So it's almost like we stop noticing it because we get really used to it. So it doesn't ring any alarm bells because we just get so familiar with living in this kind of little amount of stress, a little bit of stress. And you're like, oh, yeah, I'm just a bit stressed. Yep, I'm just a bit stressed. But you're like, don't need to do anything about it. It's normal. We normalize being stressed all the time. And when we normalize it, that creates a pattern in the body, which we no longer notice happening because that becomes our baseline. And so it's really interesting when we actually start to feel into the tissue or feel into the movement of the pelvic floor. That's when we can start to see, okay, like I'm actually holding onto some stress here. Or it might just be like, oh, it's summer, I want to look good on the beach, and you're sucking in your tummy, or you're wearing tight skinny jeans and it's sucking in your tummy. And when we suck in our bellies, that automatically activates the pelvic floor. It automatically lifts the pelvic floor. If you want to try it now, you can try it now. If you're listening at home, try drawing in your belly, and you might notice there's a little bit of lift in the pelvis. And so, even things like that, which we might just do automatically or without thinking about it, that's also putting a bit of load onto the pelvic floor or putting it into that contraction more than we're actually relaxing it.
I feel like if I can weave this back to the whole pregnancy process, when we talk about chronic holding patterns and of the pelvic floor, when you look at that from a birthing perspective, and if you don't know
Mm.
actually how to relax the pelvic floor, so a lot of people, when they think about pregnancy, the first thing they think of is, I need to tighten my pelvic floor. I need to do my Kegel exercises. I need
Mm.
to make sure my pelvic floor is really strong. So then off they go and they start doing their pelvic floor exercises. Now, the first thing to understand about that is 50% at least of women don't know how to do pelvic floor exercises correctly. So they're incorrectly engaging their
Mm.
pelvic floor. And then on top of that, you do have things like chronic holding patterns and hypertonic pelvic floors. And I feel like what we're seeing
Mhm.
more these days when it comes to first pregnancies, women that have never birthed before, is more tightness through the pelvic floor, so a hypertonic pelvic floor. So then you take that and then you add
Mhm.
someone that's pregnant and being like, I've got to keep my pelvic floor tight and strong. So they go doing their pelvic floor
Mm.
exercises. And then when it comes time for the birth, their pelvic floor is tight and then they've gone and tightened it even more. And when you've got a muscle that needs to relax
Yeah.
3 times its normal length, which is what the pelvic floor has to do, it's insane,
Mhm.
right? You've got an inability to do that. So that's when the kind of issues start in the birth. The pelvic floor is not stretching correctly. So there's so much in all of this. And I love that there's that more mind, body, spiritual connection to this as well, which you're bringing in here. And there's so many ways that we can go here. But you have mentioned the nervous system, and you've also mentioned congestion. So these are the two paths that I want to go down. When it comes to
Yeah.
the nervous system, we'll start there
Yeah.
because 100% the nervous system plays a huge role in pelvic health and our overall well-being.
Mm.
When it comes to your holistic pelvic care, can you give us some insights into how this addresses nervous system regulation and what kind of techniques that you might use to help clients achieve a bit more calm and balance, not only in themselves, but in their pelvic bowl?
Yeah, absolutely. So we already spoke about how anatomically the pelvic floor and the psoas muscle are very closely
Mm-hmm.
related. And then let's talk about the nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system, which is involuntary, so we can't control this. So it's got two parts. So we've got the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or
Mm-hmm.
flight. And so this affects the pelvic floor, the bladder, urinary, because it prevents release when we're in a stress response. So let's say we're running from danger, but we also really need to go to the bathroom. This system prevents us from going. So it holds, it stops. And then we've got the parasympathetic, which is our rest and digest. And this allows for the relaxation of the pelvic floor, the bladder, and the urinary tract for release. And so when we're talking about an overactive sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight, which can be activated through that low-grade chronic stress that we talked about or through prolonged periods of high stress, then what this can lead to is an overly tight pelvic floor from that constant contraction, from that sense of unease, from that need to flee is probably the best word I
Mm-hmm.
can use. And that can lead to difficulty with urinary release and even with bowel movements, digestive health. And so that's a key part of why we really want to be working with activating the rest and digest of the nervous system. And so then we talk about mind body connection, emotional stress, anxiety, difficulties in life directly impacting the nervous system and the pelvic floor, because chronic stress will increase that fight and flight activity. Again, which can then manifest as pain or discomfort, digestive issues. And so by using holistic pelvic care, what we really do is we bring the person back into their body. So when we're in that stress response, what we really feel is that we're out of the body or we're really in the mind, and we kind of we disassociate a little bit. We really want to be working with people to bring them back into their body, bring their presence back. And one of the biggest keys is breath. So when we are in that activated fight and flight, one of the first things that leaves is the breath. You'll notice yourself holding, and then that there's some holding and tension and squeezing. And so we really want to invite that breath back in, invite them to breathe deeply. I notice a lot that people breathe quite high into their chest, and that's quite panty, and I feel quite anxious breathing like that. And inviting them to actually breathe lower so that as you breathe in, push your belly out, let it really fill. And then as you let the breath go, draw the belly back to the spine. Maybe you open your mouth, let the breath fall out of the mouth, opening the jaw. So that might look like, that's almost like a sigh of the body. And that breath really brings you back into your body, into your presence. It might look like touching parts of your body, maybe rubbing your thighs, speaking to the body. Can you feel the weight of your hips? Allow your hips just to sink more into your seat. Let your legs really be heavy. Let them sink into gravity. A lot of the language that we use is somatic and speaking to what you're feeling in the body. And that brings someone back into presence. And you want to bring them back into rest and digest. And really, a lot of it is about slowing down. because we do work at this crazy, crazy pace, which is go, 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 go. And it's okay, what if you just slowed things right down? Even if you didn't change what you were doing, but you just shifted the pace. That's also going to allow your body to come into more of a resting mode.
We're ancient beings having a modern experience, right? So the
Mm.
fight, flight, freeze, fawn
Mm.
response is so inbuilt into us. And you're totally right. I feel like our modern experience is so busy, rushed, stressed. Everyone's like on fast forward. And I feel like so many women actually get out of touch of themselves. I think not even women. I think as humans, we are so out of touch with our
Mm.
own bodies, our own spirituality, that I think it's hard for people to reconnect with that. Now, you
Mm.
did mention congestion previously, because I feel like all of
Mhm.
this is very tied together, right? So if we're operating
Yeah.
out here and we're not operating here, then there's going to be
Mhm.
areas of congestion in our body that are blocking those pathways from whatever we're trying to create. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but in my thinking, if we're operating from like this frantic fight flight response and we're disconnected from ourselves and our bodies, then there's going to be blockages, right, in our body that's stopping
Yeah.
that connection
Mhm.
from mind to heart or wherever you want it to go. And you've mentioned
Mm.
congestion previously, so I may be off track here, but can you talk about the
That's
concept of
okay.
energetic consent?
Let's
Yeah,
jump.
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
jump
So
topics.
can we
I love the feminine flow. Let's
yeah.
go here. Let's go there. So, congestion is something that I see a lot, especially in the pelvic floor. I have it in my own pelvis from my daily stress, and it's something that really needs to be cleared. And how congestion can manifest physically is pelvic tension, pelvic pain, cystic fibroids, period pain, recurrent UTIs, and recurrent vaginal bacterial vaginosis. I can never say that
Mhm,
properly.
mhm.
And when we see these things occurring, or like UTIs that just continually don't resolve, it's showing me the body's capacity to release is in some sort of dysfunction. And so you'll see that maybe that there is a holding pattern within the actual muscle tissue of the pelvis, or maybe there's some fascial adhesions. And so in the session, what we're really doing is trying to work with the tissue so that, like you said, there's so much focus on tightening, tightening, tightening. What we want to do is have dynamic movement of the pelvic floor muscles. So yes, we want to have that beautiful strength where it can come together and lift, but we also want it to be able to completely relax and expand so that it allows for release. And that can be just from a complete release of the bladder. But it's also like that relaxation is actually required for that sense of ease as well in our bodies. And that can be an energetic sense of ease, or it can be a sense of ease in the actual physical body, in that the actual muscles can relax and you can feel that difference between the squeeze and the relax, rather than sitting in this middle point between the two where you're not really contracting and you're not really relaxing. And it's very easy for the body to get stuck in that kind of midpoint.
Now, we're going to jump around again here, because in my head, I'm thinking congestion. I'm thinking energetic congestion, because I understand
Mm.
there's definitely the physical congestion, which is to do with that more muscle, fascia, adhesions, that physical
Mhm.
aspect. But then from conversations that I've had previously, I understand that the pelvic bowl holds trauma, and that an
Mm.
aspect of birthing is like a release of that held emotion in the pelvic
Mm.
bowl. So I guess my head was going to that energetic congestion. Can we
Mm.
talk a little
Mhm.
bit about how the pelvic bowl holds trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. You hear people say your emotions are stored in the hips, our emotions are stored in the hips. And when you think of the pelvis, it's shaped like a container, it's like a vessel. And it really is a vessel, and it holds all of our life experiences, all of our emotions, all of our patterns, our imprints. And what happens with life is if we're not digesting what's happened to us, if we're not moving through and allowing things to have their full process, is that creates blockages, that creates congestion. And so when we start to go into the pelvis, it's like we're looking at this map of our lives. It's like digging through an archaeological exploration of who we are as a person. And so, if it's never been looked at, when we start to go into the bowl and we start to stir things, like things start to come up. And that's what you can see happen in a session. And of course, it's always up to the client if they want to address it or not, because some people might just want to come in for the physical treatment. And of course, that's always welcome and okay. If the client does want to address it, what can happen sometimes, a blockage can be just an energetic blockage. So as you start to work with that blockage and start to release it, there might be a physiological response, but there might not be an emotional response. It could look like emotions, like it could be through tears. Maybe it's laughter, could be anything, but they're actually not emotionally activated. And then that's just a beautiful movement of the energy starting to flow. And then you might have the situation where there is an emotional response. And so one of the biggest parts of what I do is actually when emotions come up is not to shut them down and to actually allow them to come up and to let them be witnessed, to allow them to be heard, to allow them to be felt and seen, and to not try to fix the client, not try to be like, oh no, that's okay, that's okay. It's actually, yes, welcome it, let it be here. It's safe for you to feel what you're feeling. It's safe for you to have emotions. And then eventually they will pass, because emotions or feelings actually have a short lifespan, but it's what we attach to them that gives it that long life, that holding pattern in the body, because we're actually not allowing it just to process through. And so it's actually giving the client the space to actually just feel what they're feeling. And that's one of the biggest, most powerful things you can do for someone, is to just allow them to be who they are, to feel what they're feeling and not to try to change it.
I love that. And you've just opened up a question that I had. And I know that we're starting to go a little bit more into a different aspect of what you do. But when we talk about the pelvic bowl holding energy, I definitely, my
Mm.
brain, I don't know, maybe I've just got sex on the brain, who knows? But, um,
How good is that?
when
Great.
but when I think about that, like, as women, you really are taking on other people's energy when you do have sex,
Mm,
right? Because you've got this
mm,
opening, you've got this portal, you've got this area of your body that holds energy, and you can absolutely hold
mm,
other people's energy in that space. And one way of taking that energy in is through sex. Can we talk?
mhm.
I know we're getting a little bit off topic here, because we're starting to go, and I know that you've done something called Fembodiment coaching, and if you wanna talk about that a
Mhm,
little bit and what that means before answering this question, that's fine. But can we talk a little bit
mhm,
about how in the act of intercourse, how you take on other people's energy and how
mhm,
that might impact our pelvic bowl and the congestion and the things that we hold there? Because it really is the core of our being and the root of our being,
mm,
and over
mm.
time, we've collected other people's energies there.
Absolutely. Such a good question. Through the Fembodiment method, like perspective, and through Taoist and all these kind of ancient wisdoms. So the pelvis, like we've spoken about, it is this container, it is this vessel. So when we are having sex with someone or even just life, we ingest that through our pelvis. Life kind of enters us through the vagina. The vagina in a woman or a vulva owner is our negative pole, and our heart is our positive pole. So we're intaking life through our vagina, and then that comes through our body. And so when we are intimate with someone, it's like the closest you can be with someone, first of all, physically. You are ingesting their energy, because whether you believe it or not, when we do come into close proximity with people, we are taking on some of their energy and they are taking on some of ours. It's, if I can explain it in a simpler way, it's like if I step into a space and I'm walking towards you and I'm smiling and I'm looking really like happy to see you, that affects you and how you're going to take me on and how you're going to receive me in that moment. But if I walk, towards you and I'm really angry and I'm like got this dark cloud over my mind and I'm like striding towards you with this like really strong dark energy, you're also going to feel that. So you can imagine, like, when you're being intimate with someone, that maybe it's not going to be so much like that with coming into you with a smile, but there is that energetic exchange. And so I would say it is wise to be conscious of who you allow into that space, but also that you can clear energy as well. You can work to clear energy, and that it's not like you have sex with someone with bad energy and that's it forever.
That's so funny. I literally wrote down clear as you said it. So let's talk about how can we go about clearing, because trust me, I'm sure many women out there want to clear some bad energy from that space. They're like, they talk about washing that man out of your hair, but let's talk about like clearing their energy out of down there.
Absolutely. There's all sorts of different ways. There's things that you can do, yoni steaming, or maybe more ritualized practice. What we do in holistic pelvic care, in Fembodiment, it's definitely more energetic things. In holistic pelvic care, we use clearing, and that can be married with the physical, the massaging, or it can be done energetically. And we use the releasing quality of the downward energy, especially from the perineum, which is our earth chi point of the body. And we work with that energy moving downward and kind of like sweeping out our energy, which might be from the pelvis, or you might work in like your whole body's energetic field, which actually goes arm's length in every direction from your body. And you can work with clearing out the space. And that involves breath, visualization, and that intention of clearing as well. And the energetic work can be just as powerful as the physical work.
Absolutely, because it goes hand in hand. We've already spoken about how stress manifests itself physically, and that stress, you can't touch it. It's an energy, it's a feeling, right? So I don't believe that you can separate like human. You can't separate the mind, body, emotion, physical thing. It's so
You can't.
it's
You really can't.
it's interconnected. Now, we've talked a little bit about somatic practices, breath work, visualizations. Obviously, that's a huge part of what you do. Can you guide us maybe through some simple exercises or techniques to help women cultivate that kind of awareness and embodiment? Or maybe we can talk about the benefits that clients can expect to experience from doing this. If you don't want to guide us through it, it's up to you.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you, I've got a couple of things we could do, and I'm happy for you to choose what you think might work better. So one thing we can do is actually place our hands kind of over the pelvis, and we can breathe into the ovaries. Or we can do a practice which is more Fembodiment, which is called a tune in and check in. And it's more about tuning into your physical body, your emotional body, and your energetic body, and starting to create that dialogue and to start to actually, use that as a practice to see where you're at in the moment with the aspects of yourself. Or we can do a little bit of a clearing practice.
Let's go with the clearing practice, seeing we've just been talking about that. And
Okay,
for
beautiful.
anyone at home that's
So-
listening that wanted to do the other stuff, feel free to reach out to Miranda. She can take you through it.
Yes. Okay, so before we go into a little
Mhm.
experience, I'm going to show you what we're going to use. Okay, so this is your pelvis, your beautiful pelvis. And a point we're going to focus on is the
Mhm.
perineum, which sits between the vagina and the anus. So this is your earth chi point, and this is something we're going to bring our awareness to. And if you're at home and you want to try this and you're struggling to connect to it, feel free to put your hand there if you're in a space that feels safe and you can do that. Or you can just imagine your mind going there. So I want you to find a way that works for you, whether you keep your hand there or you just place a finger there and touch it momentarily, just to help to bring your mind down. So that's the point we're going to use. Beautiful. All right. So when you're ready, I just invite you to bring yourself into a comfortable seat and just taking as much time as you need. It's always nice not to rush the body. So I'm moving now more into the feminine pace. And if it's safe for you to do, you can close down your eyes. Or if it's not, you can keep your eyes open, but I invite you to drop your gaze down into your body, looking towards your belly or towards your pelvis. And that's just going to help to bring your focus more into you. Beautiful. And so wherever you are, I'm going to invite you to start to take deeper breaths so that you feel the belly expand as you breathe in through the nose. And just open the mouth and let the breath fall out as you exhale. Do 2 more like that, in through the nose. And empty, maybe it feels nice for you to sigh. One more in your own timing. And then I'm just going to invite you to continue breathing in a way that feels comfortable for you, which might be breathing in and out through the nose, or you might like to stay with breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Keep inviting the breath to expand the belly to soften back towards the spine. And feel the weight of your hips and the surface beneath it. And just see if you can let your hips deepen into your seat. And maybe you even relax your spine back into the support behind you if you're sitting into a chair or with your back to a wall. You might already notice that you're more relaxed. And then when the time feels right for you, bring your awareness down to the perineum. So to that place between the vagina opening and the anus. And from that point, start to draw a grounding cord with your mind's eye down into the earth. And that might look like roots, a rope, maybe a beam of light, a funnel, a rhythm, maybe even a sound. Just find the perfect way for you. There really is no right or wrong. Taking your time to find that connection from your earth chi into the earth. And then once you have that, breathe along that line. And so that's encouraging your mind and your body to strengthen that connection now. So breathe along your grounding cord and intend for that connection to strengthen. Taking your time. And if it's your first time and it feels a little weird or uncomfortable, that's okay. Once your grounding cord feels nice and strong and you feel that deep connection with the earth, come now to your pelvis. Whether you see it or just sense it, maybe you place your hands over the lower belly to help to bring your mind down into that space. And then I invite you to walk around your pelvic bowl with your mind's eye and just gently sweep it out. I'm just going to preface that if you are pregnant, to not work too strongly with this. You might just give it a little dust off. If you are pregnant, just work with just connecting to the space and breathing to the space. I don't want you to work too much with the clearing. Now, as you sweep, you might like to use the qualities of the breath to help with the release. So breathing in, you start the sweep, and as you exhale, you invite that to move down and out of your body through the grounding cord. So inhale, sweeping. Exhale, releasing. And really see yourself releasing any clutter, which might look like physical tension. Maybe it's energetic tension. Maybe it looks like cobwebs. However you see it or feel it, invite it to move down and out. Maybe you even see yourself giving it over to the earth. And the earth really has this capacity to hold anything that we can no longer hold. And the earth has this capacity to transmute anything into something else. So just trusting that the earth can hold it and take it from you and just giving it over. Do this 3 more times. Sweeping and clearing, releasing down, letting it travel down or fall down. Staying close to your breath. And then when you feel complete with that, I'd like to invite you to then shift the direction of your grounding cord and now start to pull up through the grounding cord and inviting that support energy from the earth to rise up and come into the pelvis. And you might, again, see it as light, feel it as the breath, see it as energy, or feel it as a rhythm. However you can connect to it is the right way. So just starting to pull up that nourishment, pulling up that support, inviting it in, welcoming it into your pelvis, into your body, into your field. And the earth has always supported you, has always loved you and held you. So really allow yourself to receive that nurturance now. And just notice how that feels. You might pull up as you breathe in. And allow it to spread throughout the pelvis as you exhale. And just do that a couple more times. And then when you feel complete with that, again, inviting you to walk around your pelvis. And maybe now you invite some light in. It's like you're opening up curtains or windows and just letting this beautiful golden light stream through. You might notice a warmth, or you might see the glow of the light, but bring as much as you can into the space. And this may or may not feel right for you. If it doesn't, you don't need to do this. But if it does, as you walk around the space, letting more and more light in, I invite you to repeat these words. I am sacred. I am blessed. I am sacred. I am blessed. I am sacred. I am blessed. And really hear those words as you move around the space. We're really making our pelvis a space that's beautiful and that we want to be. And when the time feels right, you can disconnect your grounding cord, relax any efforts of the practice, and just take a few moments now to absorb. And by that, just noticing any sensations inside your body, outside of your body. Maybe you feel nothing, and that's okay. Maybe you feel buzzing or tingling or warmth. Whatever you're feeling is welcome. And then finally, whether your eyes are open or closed, I just invite you to drop your chin so that your inner gaze shifts down in towards your body. And I just invite you to smile down into your pelvis. Smile into your heart. Smile into your body. And really send love to your body, send gratitude to your body. And then when the time feels right for you, very gently, without any sense of hurry, you can start to bring yourself back into your room, back into your space. Maybe stretching if that feels good. Opening your eyes if they were closed. Or just lifting your gaze if your eyes were dropped.
That was amazing.
How was that for you?
I love that so much, because also what an incredible resource. So for people that might have been listening while they were driving or something like that, you can now actually go back to this recording at this particular section and listen to your beautiful, calming, incredible voice that brought in all kinds of I've got quite a visual
Thank
mind.
you.
So I was seeing all these things that you were talking about. And I'm a New Zealander. So
I
when you
love
were
that.
talking about connecting to the earth and that type of thing, I automatically go to that very Maori imagery of Mother Earth and that type of thing. So that's incredible.
Mm.
Now, one thing that came to mind, you mentioned pregnancy and just lightly
Mhm.
dusting there, because I feel like there'd
Yeah.
definitely be a lot of for those who are pregnant, I understand that
Mm.
you don't want to go too heavily into that practice, but there would be some fear, I would say, for women
Mm.
that are about to give birth and their birth path is going to be vaginal, and you're going to be passing
Mhm.
through the pelvic floor. I would say that there's probably going to be some fear. Like, we're talking about clearing different people's energies
Mhm.
there, but you could definitely use that practice. Am I correct? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you could use that to clear out some of the fear that may be sitting that in that pelvic bowl to get ready for birth. And
Mm.
then at the same time, and we're going to talk about this a little bit now, but I feel like at the same time, if there's some birth trauma sitting there as well.
Yeah, with birth, when someone is pregnant, the reason why we don't do very strong
Mhm.
clearing is because when they're in pregnancy, it's really like
Mhm.
gestation mode. And so we don't want to be messing around with that and moving energy down because it's not time for the energy to move down. What we do work with while they're pregnant is definitely we work with the pelvis still and we work with four directions and bringing the mother's awareness to different parts of the pelvis, which might address fear, it might address support, it might look like whatever comes up for the mother, if anything. And why we just do the light dusting is so that we're not inviting too much of that downward moving energy before it's time for
Mhm.
the body. I would definitely recommend it pre-conception is really great to clear, and especially the physical aspects as well is getting that tissue really like soft and malleable and dynamic so that you're getting the physical body in this space where it's wanting to
Mm.
receive. It's a really beautiful preconception. But during birth, we say to leave the nest alone and let it do its thing because it's like you're growing a human inside of you, and that's
Mm.
amazing. So we don't want to work too strongly with clearing anything out, but we definitely can work with the energy of if there is fear coming up, having that dialogue with the body. So we work more with opening up that conversation with the internal wisdom, like if she is feeling fear, but it's okay, what's the fear actually coming from? Is the fear from for the birth, or is the fear having enough support, or is the fear becoming a mother? Like, so it's actually fine tuning that a little bit more so that they know where they need to resource or bring in more support rather than just being like, I'm scared. So it's like empowering them by going into their bodies for the answer. And then from having those answers, they can take a little bit of action towards bringing in that support so that it can ease a bit of that fear if it is fear that's coming up.
Amazing. Amazing. I love this so much. Can we talk a little bit about birth trauma now? Because obviously there's
Mm.
so many women. I think the statistics are like 1 in 3 women are experiencing birth trauma of some aspect. And obviously, even
Mm.
if your birth went okay, there can be aspects of it where the women didn't feel safe. There's so many things that can contribute to someone feeling like their birth was traumatic. And it can
Mm.
have lasting impacts on your pelvic health. There's conditions like prolapse. Do you have any experience in working with women who have experienced birth trauma? And what kind of holistic approaches have you found would be the most effective when it comes to supporting healing and
Mm.
recovering in that aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest key is we always want to prevent things, right? So when it comes to the physical aspects, the biggest thing I would say is for new mums is to not rush back to life, to really stay close to the home, close to the bed immediately after birth, because what's happened to your body is an incredible opening. All of your hips, the ligaments, everything's very laxed and mobile. And that takes time to come back. And that takes time to build strength again. So I really wouldn't be racing back to do anything. That's very important, I believe, whether you've had a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth, is to actually let yourself heal. Let yourself heal and actually have a plan post birth of how you can let yourself do that. Call in your tribe, get the people that you need so that you can really just be with the baby, nursing the baby, looking after your body, and nourishing your body. Now, with birth trauma, so some women may have births where even if there has been some sort of intervention, that they actually feel complete. They don't feel any dis-ease with the birth. And then for others, however they've birthed, it can feel sometimes that there is something that's unresolved, or there has been trauma, or there was a very difficult birth. Now, with holistic pelvic care, it's a beautiful way to bring in healing with this. Now, what we can't do is we can't change what's happened. But like we said, like the pelvis is a vessel that holds experiences and holds the energetics of the experience. So what we work with holistic pelvic care is actually shifting the way that the body's holding onto the energy, changing the way the body's storing that energy so that the mother can feel ease or feel that completion with the birth energy.
Amazing. It's so cool, isn't it? And I love that you've taken us through one of the visualizations and ways that you would work with people. You've spoken about a little bit about pregnancy, you've spoken about preconception, you've spoken about the postnatal. So you really can help in all different
Mm,
aspects of this. And holistic pelvic care isn't just about the physical, it's not just about one kind of area. It's it
mm.
can help everyone, really.
Yeah, and I would say even if your birth went magically, it is still, I would see it as essential care, because whether or not it was, however your birth happened, there's an incredible load on the fascia, on the muscles, on the body. And so it's really beautiful just to bring that alignment back, to bring that healing touch back to the fascia, to bring that warmth back to the muscles so that when you do start using the muscles again, that they're moving a little bit more dynamically. The fascias has that better flow where it's got that nice lift, because what happens when it gets stretched is that it loses that, there's that stretch that happens so that the fascia is not actually sitting the way it would normally support the organs and support the tissue. And so that just encourages the fascia to start coming back, supporting the organs again, creating that
Mm,
lift. And that's like very good for preventing prolapse. But I think the key for preventing prolapse is that if it didn't happen in the birth, is to not rush. Don't hold anything heavier than your baby for
mm.
a while. And then you want to be working with someone like you when the time is right and you want to start working with the body again to actually do it
Mm.
safely.
I like that because I feel like I know in my area, there's so many conflicting and contradictory advice out there. And there's definitely people that are sharing the message that you can go back to training as soon as you feel right, and even if that's before 6 weeks. Yeah, sure, if you feel good to move again, great, start moving again, I support that. But things like what you're talking about, and I was talking about this with a client yesterday, how there's that section during birth where I can't remember the specific word
Mm,
that is used for
mm,
it, but it's essentially your sacrum comes out and lifts up. It's wild. I was showing my client who's about to give
mm.
birth pictures of it. I'm like, you're because the body is such an amazing thing, right? So the
Oh,
the female
incredible.
body is actually the pelvis kind of separates and your sacrum literally comes out and lifts up and then goes back
Mm,
before the baby's feet is born. So incredible. And all of these things are
mm,
happening and it takes time for your body to just go back to normal. And I think what you're talking about is so
mm.
important not to rush back to life. And I think too many women again feel that pressure of trying to get back to normal. And there's that whole bounce back culture and like trying to get
Yes.
your body back. And it's like your body was just
Yes. And I'm like, stop using the
done.
word back because you're no longer
I
the
know,
same
right?
person. You just grew a whole human. You're now a mother. You are different. And actually, let's change the way that we use words so we actually see that as an amazing
Mm,
thing. Going back,
mm,
stuff that. You're new now. You're a mother. You've grown a baby inside you. You've moved through this incredible process of birthing a human. Like you're a whole new you. And so I would say don't use the words back. Don't use the words return, old me. Yeah, old you is old. New you is way better. And working with your body after birth in the way that it actually is in the moment is going to help you to take much better care of your
I
body.
love that. And when I talk about the maternal metamorphosis, which is what I view the pregnancy process as, it's a maternal
I love
yeah,
that
it's a maternal
phrasing.
metamorphosis. You don't see a butterfly trying to become a caterpillar again, right? Like, you don't see
Yes.
a butterfly shedding its wings and going back to being a caterpillar. No, it goes on to be a butterfly. It's that metamorphosis of motherhood, right?
Mhm.
Now, I could talk to you about all this stuff forever, but I do understand we have time limits here. Before we close off, and I feel like you've answered this in a few different ways already, but if there was one thing
Mhm.
you wish all women knew before having a baby, what would it be?
Which is exactly, you're so right. It is. I would actually encourage you to spend more time planning what happens post birth because I feel like the medical system works a lot on focusing on getting pregnant, caring for yourself during pregnancy, all of the testing, all of the appointments. But then what's happening after birth is actually as important, if not more important, because you are a whole new person and you have a whole new person or persons if you had more than one baby. And you actually do need probably more support than you need now because we live in a world where we're not living in big family networks, in big tribes. There's a lot more pressure for the parents to be everything to their babies. And I encourage you to not be everything to your baby. You can't be everything to your baby. Call in your people, bring in support and have that set up. Make your calls. What are people able and willing to support you in? And plan that and really give yourself 100% permission to throw out the bounce back, getting back to the old you, and really give yourself permission to be this new version of you. What I would say.
Absolutely. And I will 100% agree with that. And I feel like it's a theme when I ask this question. There's a real theme, and it's
Mm,
the message that you're giving there.
yeah,
So I think I love that it's being reiterated. So thank you so much for your time today.
yeah. And oh, my pleasure. And I would also say spend time connecting too and listening to your body. Try to figure out what that voice is. And so you use your body, listen to your body. And especially like even going to doctors, going to professionals, there isn't just one opinion. So I would also stay open and curious. And when they do give you advice, I would also take that advice on, but also give that advice to your body and see what your body has to say. And start practicing using your body as like a beacon or someone to bounce things off, like you would with a trusted friend or someone that you really trust, whose opinion you really trust, and building that relationship with your body.
And obviously, anybody who needs help with that can reach out to your amazing self at We the Fem. And I'll put all of that
Yes.
information at the bottom of this podcast. So thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk about all of these things with you.
And if you're hearing this message, I want to say a huge thank you, because it means that you've listened to this entire episode. Of course, if you have any questions about the things that we covered in this episode, or want to know more about me or my other projects, you can find me on YouTube and Instagram at The Pregnancy Process. For those currently in their conception or pregnancy journey, you can apply to join my complimentary but private community, the Preggy Training Crew. And you'll find my community application and social media links in the episode description. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I absolutely encourage you to share it with other women just like you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.